Ortolano, and our two guests today. We've got JJ Ferroni with Guru and Steve Mayernick with RJMetrics. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well, thanks.
Doing great, Chris, thanks.
Hey, I love the sort of Philadelphia focus of this story. Before we start talking about sales enablement and sales enablement metrics, just give us a little context of the Philly startup scene and how you guys met.
Sure, Steve. I'll start there, and you can certainly add color. So JJ Ferroni, head of sales here at Guru. Thanks for having us, Chris and Dom. Obviously, our connection to RJMetrics is a local one. We're a Philly startup based out of Old City, Philadelphia, and Guru is a sales enablement platform that enables sales reps to find the knowledge that they need when they're interfacing with prospects and clients. And the way that we do that is we put that knowledge directly into their workflow. We feel like reps spend a fair portion of their day just searching for and finding information outside of their workflow so that they can interact and answer questions with prospects. So that's the challenge that we were looking to solve. And one of our earliest clients is Steve at RJMetrics. Obviously, our ideal customer profile are growing tech companies, and RJMetrics fit right in line there. So we reached out to RJMetrics sales leader and started working with Steve, who is running the sales enablement program there, to really define what that a rollout strategy and adoption would look like for Guru.
Sure, and Steve Mayernick here with RJMetrics. RJMetrics is a hosted business intelligence platform, so we help SMBs leverage the entirety of their data set by pulling in various data sources into a central data warehouse and then providing a visualization reporting layer on top of that. And as JJ alluded to, we're both in Philadelphia, obviously, and we happened to get involved with Guru at a really interesting time at RJMetrics when we were rapidly growing our inside sales team. And given the nature of our business, we were had a lot of unique challenges. Just being in the data space, there's a whole bunch of information that a sales rep's required to know in order to have an effective conversation and really take a consultative approach to sales, which is one that we emphasized. So the main challenge for us was just how do we streamline all of this information? How do we make it easily accessible for sales reps to have access to this information and make sure that they don't necessarily have to remember everything there is to remember, that they can quickly access this information, as I said. So the timing was really, really great. Like JJ said, I'm responsible for all sales enablement at RJMetrics, and this was a core challenge we were looking to solve, and it was something I was actively working on when I was introduced to Guru.
That's great. Steve, about a year ago, you wrote a blog post that really caught my eye. You suggested that there was a baseline for measuring the amount of time that your reps were ramping up, but then you introduced HQA. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So HQA is our success metric from which we determined how quickly a rep was ramping. So we were able to define that success metric in Salesforce.com, and it was a combination of both what we called a high-quality conversation and an actual handoff from a development rep onto an account executive. And when we looked at some of the historical data, we realized that these are the two things that predicted the success of a development rep. So what we did is we sort of combined those two into one success metric, and we realized that they needed to hit a certain amount of those to really be on pace to be an effective contributor as a development rep. So, like I said, we defined that success metric within Salesforce.com, and we built out an 8-week ramp period for our reps in which they needed to hit those success metrics, and there were various milestones that they needed to. And we, I think that was really important for us, and I think there was a whole lot of collaboration amongst the sales leadership as to what that success metric actually looked like, and I think that was a crucial moment for us in terms of just being consistent across our sales organization as we grew, and I think being transparent with all the reps about this is what you need to do, this is how you can measure your own performance, and I think that they very much appreciated that transparency as well.
Now, is that your own innovation, the HQA?
Yes.
Is that a commonly used metric in your experience?
So I would say that the handoff certainly is. When you have a development team and an account executive team, I think that that is often a success metric used in order to gauge how effective a development rep is being. But yeah, I think the combination of those two into one single success metric was a little bit unique. But we knew that the handoffs didn't necessarily tell the whole story. And I think another piece of that's really important is a lot of our development reps, this was their first job in sales potentially, and we wanted to get them a little momentum and make them feel like they were contributing, not necessarily having handoffs, but if they're having good quality conversations, I think on the phone, that was important to recognize as well.
JJ, what are you seeing in the industry in terms of how long it's taking new reps to ramp?
There's lots of actual research out there on onboarding times. It can certainly vary depending on the complexity of the actual sales cycle. Usually you'll see it can range from 3 months all the way up to a year, depending on the types of product that you're looking to sell in the marketplace and how many products a sales rep is expected to sell in the marketplace. And given sales reps are one of the more typically expensive resources at a company, Guru's focus on decreasing that ramp time can have a tangible impact on a company in terms of cost that they're savings in terms of sales salaries, as well as ramping their ability to achieve quota.
So do you provide some process for companies to baseline their costs associated with ramp pre-Guru?
We haven't to date out of the box. We've worked with clients like Steve. Given RJMetrics is obviously an analytics company, it was a little bit easier to work with them and understanding what their baseline is for getting a ramp up to quota pre-Guru. And then weave Guru into the story to start to measure what the impact that Guru is having on that sales rep ongoing. From our perspective, one of the things that's really important is we're not a learning management system per se. We don't do courses or anything like that. We believe that there's a misnotion that you train a rep once and then put them out there and allow them to sell. And Guru actually focuses more on the ongoing enablement piece. And there's research out there that talks about the fact that sales reps actually learn by doing their job, and they typically don't remember a lot of what they learned in the courses in their onboarding period. So Guru focuses a lot on helping a rep get up to speed quickly as they're doing their job, as they're interacting with prospects, when they need the knowledge that the prospect is requesting.
Let's talk about the implementation of Guru at RJMetrics. How did you start to assess what knowledge was core, and then what knowledge was considered phase 2 or phase 3 in terms of building out the database?
Sure. So I would say JJ was particularly helpful there, and we knew that in order to have a successful implementation, we really needed to narrow the scope of our implementation. And I think that went a long way in terms of proving the value of Guru to the sales reps as well. So for us, that was competitive analysis. And like I said, we are data analytics. So naturally, there are a whole bunch of conversations that we have that are difficult to navigate from a competitive landscape. Both complementary tools that get confused because they've got analytics in the name, like Google Analytics, or direct competitors that do things very differently. It's a very nuanced landscape. So when I first arrived at RJMetrics, they had multiple spreadsheets with almost 100 at the time. Competitors in various spreadsheets that the reps would be fumbling around on the phone. And I just knew immediately that this was a huge challenge for our sales team, and also the way we were going about solving for this problem was not ideal. So Guru was very valuable from that standpoint. It allowed us to categorize different competitors, allow us to position each one based on that category. And I think sort of something that flew under the radar was with a sales team growing into the mid-20s, 30s even, it's impossible for me to sit on every call. And a lot of competitors get mentioned that we've never heard from. And I think that that's valuable information that we would lose. Even if they're pushing it in Slack or GChat or passing it off to me, there's no mechanism in place to make sure that that information is, taken in and that competitors reported upon. So I think just being able to flag all competitors that were popping up, the business intelligence landscape is very oversaturated right now. So there were a whole bunch of new ones popping up. Sales reps were able to create that information in Guru and give me notifications to get to it and to do the research such that the next time that competitor got mentioned, somebody else could access that information and be able to navigate that conversation well.
Let's talk about that two-way knowledge transfer. So the front line is able to convey information back to the Guru administrator and then update the knowledge base?
Sure. So, and JJ, feel free to jump in at any point. The way the Guru works is every time you create a piece of information, an expert is needed to verify that piece of information. So in this case, a sales rep would create a piece of content, and even if it was just a, hey, can you check out this competitor XYZ? And they would label me the verifier on that piece of information. I would get pinged with a notification. And that's not like an ephemeral piece of knowledge. That's stored in Guru. And that allows two things to happen. First of all, for me not to lose that information, and I get consistently reminded to get to it if I don't. And another thing is, if another sales rep accesses that information, they can see that it's either up to date, or they can see that, oh, this competitor popped up with somebody else, and then they can comment on that. And then that allows me to see, hey, this competitor is being talked about a lot. And there was one instance where a company came up out of nowhere, and I happened to see 2 or 3 comments of other people mentioning them, and it turns out they were like buying some of our ad space. And people were searching RJMetrics, and this one company was coming up. So that allowed me to sort of prioritize that from a sales enablement standpoint and make sure that the reps had everything they needed to have more conversations about that company.
Oh, that's great.
How would you say that customer prospect experience, as in having that kind of access to real-time data and analytics? Like, how did it change that experience for the people that you were trying to convert? And also, like, in terms of keeping your messaging synced up in terms of like what's most effective. Are you guys sharing that and kind of optimizing it on the fly?
Definitely. So I would say that being able, like I said, to position ourselves against every type of competitor allowed us to really have a consistent value proposition across the board, which is something we really struggled with, especially when we were introducing all sorts of new reps. So that was huge. And I would say that we were able to pull some of that data in from Guru, all of it, tie it together with our Salesforce data. Just, again, given the nature of our business, we were able to pull both of those pieces of data together into a data warehouse and then sort of slice and splice the data up and be able to really see what was working and what wasn't, and what was working and for whom. And that generated a whole bunch of social proof as well. We could see that our most effective reps were the ones using Guru the most. So for those struggling to adopting it, or those a little bit cynical of the tool, we were able to point to the fact that our best reps were the ones using it the most.
Got it. So could you put some numbers to that, as in like enabling the sales team in this way? Like what quantifiable ways did it, say, decrease the total sales cycle, increase total conversions, revenue, whatever those metrics are? Like, what were you measuring for this?
Sure. So going back to the high-quality activities that we were measuring, we were able to, with the number of high-quality activities that we wanted reps to hit within that 8-week onboarding period, we were able to decrease that onboarding time 60%. Mm-hmm. So we actually, the way we went about this was we were onboarding maybe 3 or 4 reps at a time, so we did a cohort analysis of each class, and that way that really allowed us to gauge the progress we were making with our onboarding program throughout. And we were able to do that pre-Guru, during the beginning stages of Guru, and then after Guru had really been implemented 100%. And we were really able to see a very rapid increase in the amount of decrease, I should say, in the amount of time it took for those reps to ramp by class, which I think was the biggest and most obvious win for us.
JJ, are you finding that across the board, teams that adopt Guru are able to measure the decrease in ramp time?
In most cases, yes. I mean, some are a bit more sophisticated in terms of their ability to actually measure or have measured in the past and have a baseline. We're working with several companies the same size as RJMetrics technology space that are seeing consistently in the upwards of 67% decrease in ramp time. Some are using it for their sales reps. Some are using it for their technical pre-sales resources and getting them up to speed. But yeah, they are consistently seeing a fairly high percentage in a decrease in their onboarding time. And two things that I wanted to mention that tie into this whole conversation. One of the main reasons for, well, there's two tenets that I want to talk about that I think are really important. First is we put the knowledge directly into the workflow. So when we talked about how the SDR team at RJMetrics is using it, one of the reasons that it's critically important in decreasing their onboarding time and decreasing the time it takes for them to respond to the prospect is because the knowledge lives where they work. They don't have to go searching for that information. And then secondly, like Steve said, there's a verification workflow that's built right in. So even when they find the information in their old way, they'd have to browse a Word document that may be pages long or an Excel spreadsheet that may be a lot of cells and have a lot of different competitors listed in it. In Guru, it is all about how the sales reps want to consume the knowledge in their workflow in the moment that they're interacting with a prospect. And I think that that's the reason that we're seeing such decreases in their onboarding time and then decreases in the engagement time with a prospect.
So let's talk about the workflow. Here at Discover.org, we use Salesforce and Tout app. A few are in Outreach, and we're migrating to Outreach. Tell us about that environment and how you would integrate with that workflow.
So Guru wants to live wherever a sales rep works. We started off as a browser extension, so we are an overlay onto whatever the sales rep is working on. If they are in Gmail, they can in one click access Guru and all of the sales assets that are available to them. They can search for, based on keywords and relevancy or tags, to find the information they need when interacting with a prospect. When they're on the Salesforce Opportunity Record, Guru can be configured to automatically surface relevant content based on the sales scenario that they're encountering, the industry, the product, the competitor, the stage that they're at. All can compile a dynamic playbook of sales knowledge that the team most frequently uses for that sales scenario. When they're on their mobile device, they can access all that same information. So our entire mantra is to live where the sales rep works, whether they're in Gmail, Salesforce, on a mobile device, whether they're in Slack asking questions, wherever it might be. We want to be able to have a very efficient means for the sales enablement person to put that knowledge there and for the sales rep to find it.
And what kind of rich media can you serve up?
So we believe that your sales playbook is much more than just marketing assets. We obviously have the ability to put forth the PDFs and PowerPoints and YouTube videos and insert those into the workflow. But one of the real benefits of Guru, and Steve can probably attest to this, is to be able to put knowledge in a consumable format that the sales rep will be able to use in the moment. So we see on a regular basis competitive or common objections that are 3 or 4 or 5 pages long in terms of Word docs are now in very consumable, what we call cards, that a sales rep can search for as they're encountering that question and be able to understand that it's accurate and that I can use it when I'm interacting with the prospect. So all the same types of materials that you would, marketing assets and collateral are certainly things that we surface for sales reps, but we also surface the more granular level questions, objections, pricing, those types of things in the workflow as well.
Steve, give us an example of that micro byte of information that is common at RJMetrics.
Sure. So as I spoke about before, when I first got to RJMetrics, it was actually the CEO doing the competitive analysis, and as a result of that, busy guy, a lot of that information was going stale, and I had to actually look through revision history in the Google Doc itself in order to see what had been updated recently and what hadn't. But that information existed in big chunks, and what I quickly realized when I tried to put that into a Guru card is that it didn't really help the sales rep that much, because they still had to determine what about that piece of information they wanted based on the conversation they were having. So working with JJ and just like employing some best practices to Guru, we're able to really take advantage of the card functionality JJ spoke about, and be able to break those into various cards and really compartmentalize that that piece of information. So a good example with the competitive analysis again is pricing information, or what to say in a competitive situation, or some of the pros and cons about that. And if it's more of a complementary tool, how we would integrate with them, and what are some of the benefits of bringing in KISS metrics to RJMetrics, things of that nature, and just the way Guru's laid out, it makes it very easy for digestible information to be read on the fly. So I think there are two pieces of that. One is the ability to educate yourself through Guru that way, which is more effective. It's also lends itself really well to having a conversation on the fly and needing to dig up a piece of information without really breaking stride. I take calls all the time with sales reps, and there's long periods of time where they're fumbling around for information, whether it be pricing or things of that nature. And I think I noticed an immediate difference when we started breaking our cards up in Guru like that. Our conversations just were a lot more fluid. There were you can search so quickly, and like JJ said, it's in your workflow. Whether you're in Salesforce, whether you're in Gmail, whether you're in Slack, you can surface that information immediately, and that just allows a sales rep to keep going and not have to stop and find that information.
So what can you tell us about the impact this has had on the actual sales process? So there's seems like there's great efficiencies here in terms of having access to information, like being able to ramp up and get them engaging with customers effectively. So, but what if anything can you say about the actual customers and their experience when they're on the other side and they're interacting with one of these highly enabled sales reps? Does it tend to accelerate the total process, or does it make it more streamlined? Does it tend to lead to more effective engagements, bigger engagements? I mean, what can you say about the impact it has on the customers who are engaging with one of these enabled sales reps?
Right. So I think when I think about sales these days, you really need to take a consultative approach to B2B sales. Buyers are more intelligent than ever, and if they want to, they can educate themselves a lot. So what I think we saw immediately was we were getting prospects on the phone much faster using Guru. And I think the reason for that is because we were able to educate them much quicker on our own. And I think that definitely accelerated our sales velocity for sure. And I would say that that was probably most noticeable early on, but I think as we continued to build out collateral and Guru, we started doing some very interesting things with our content. And we had a blog with all kinds of blog posts that were really good, but sales reps never used them because they were really hard to find. And what we started doing is we really spent a lot of time unpacking that buyer journey and the buying committee. So it's very rare for us to get in a situation where we talk to the one stakeholder who's got the buying power and is going to make a decision by himself. Generally, there's 3 to 5 people involved in every buying decision. So what we are able to do with our content is categorize it by different buyer personas. And that allowed a sales rep to keep everyone in that buying committee engaged throughout the buying journey. And I think that lent itself to a much more efficient sales velocity as well, because we don't have to worry about looping in people. We're keeping them engaged with relevant content because all of it's categorized in Guru. They can just search by the buyer persona and the buyer stage, and it's all formatted in Guru to just be plugged right into an email. So I think that, and we talk about the Salesforce functionality based on the changes that you make to your Salesforce fields. That information can proactively be surfaced to you as well. So you can change the stage or the persona field that we have in Salesforce, and it will actually, like I said, proactively push content relevant to that person, which, like I said, is hugely effective in terms of keeping everyone in that buying committee engaged and wanting to buy.
That seems like a huge advantage, especially when they're looking at your competitors. And if their competitors are slow and they're not keeping all those on the sales committee fully and actively engaged, if you're the one providing that real-time information and it's good information. It's in the format that they like, and you're kind of building a deeper knowledge about who they are and what drives them and their processes. Seems like that's definitely going to keep them captivated and draw the attention away from others that they might be considering.
Absolutely. And just to reemphasize the data-driven piece of that, we're able to see how each individual piece of content's performing and how much they're actually using it. So each card that we create, each piece of content, has statistics associated with it. So we can see what people are actually sending, what's working, what's not, and then I'm able to work with our content marketing team and be able to figure out, where are the gaps here, and how do we sort of tighten up our content marketing strategy to help enable sales even more.
That is powerful. I mean, because I can imagine somebody who's overseeing the entire sales team to be able to add that as a strategic tool that they can actually quantify and optimize, rather than without that tool. It's like you put a bunch of content out there, and you may know that the content is amazing and theoretically very powerful, but you don't know how effectively it's being used and which content is more effective than other ones. Is there any capacity to like A/B test within this system, or is that not available yet? Because what I'm getting at is that if you have a piece of content, maybe a piece of sales collateral that's designed for a specific buyer persona at a specific stage, is there any way to methodically test variations on that, on say a piece of collateral?
Not today. Not today. It's a good. I mean, it's certainly a good idea, but as a starting point, we want to make sure that the Steves of the world, the VP of Sales of the world, have a pretty good grasp of everything that their sales reps are asking for, what they're finding, what they're not finding is just as important, and what's being used and what's actually working and leading to closed deals.
We did use Guru. We use Outreach as well, and we were able to create cards in Guru and collaborate off of them that we fed into templates in Outreach, and we A/B tested in Outreach, obviously. But it was very collaborative, and we're able to bounce ideas back and forth within Guru. And then, like I said, because that's already existing in Chrome or wherever the Salesforce is working, they're able to just get that into a template. Some of the development rep managers are able to do that very easily, and we test that way.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes.
I'm sure you have some questions, Chris, but I want to make sure we get in before we have to go. Not even necessarily right now, but the sales stack that you guys would recommend for SMBs and how a tool like Guru would fit into that. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Chris.
Well, as Dom said, there's a lot of content that you've brought up, a lot of really keen ideas. How can we leave our audience with one or two takeaways as they begin to start their sales enablement process or journey, if you will? Let's start with you, Steve, and then we'll kind of move to JJ and try to get some takeaways.
Sure. So the one thing I would preach is try to be analytical. Sales enablement can be very amorphous. It can be really hard to measure the successes and the failures. And as your product changes, as your market changes, your sales enablement collateral is going to have to change, and the way your sales reps operate is going to have to change. So I take a very iterative and analytical approach to sales enablement at RJMetrics, and I think Guru is great because we're able to access all the data that Guru has to offer and push that into our own analytics tool, obviously. So I think those are the two things that I would emphasize. And whatever stack you're composing, I would say make sure that you can get access to the raw data, and that you are, if not already an analytical sales enablement manager or product marketer, that you become one, and you start to think that way. I think it becomes more and more important as, like I said, the buyer journey gets more confusing and buyers get more intelligent. You really need to be maximizing your sales enablement collateral.
JJ?
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that, and I would also add that it's never too early to start. We talk to a lot of organizations that have a couple of sales reps that think, well, I have a Google Doc and or a PowerPoint slide for my sales process, and we always say that it's never too early to start, to get your sales reps having a consistent message and an efficient means when they're talking with prospects to access the competitive intelligence, product information, common objections, whatever it might be, so that as you grow, you already have a platform in place to scale, is number one. And then number two is, if you're going to start with sales enablement, really have a conversation with your sales reps to understand how they consume the knowledge. What we often see is that too many people that are thinking about sales enablement are just thinking about the content that needs to be written, not necessarily how that content is going to be consumed and the places that that content will be consumed, whether it's on the phone or in an email or on an on-site meeting. And what happens is you get a battle card that's 5 pages long, and that's great, but it's really difficult for a sales rep to use that when they need it.
So, JJ, I work with a number of smaller teams. Our team is larger. We have about 20 SDRs. But let's say I had 10 or fewer. What would be the first step for me to start considering Guru?
Well, Guru's free for 10 or fewer, so I would recommend that they sign up. We do have kind of like a getting started best practices, and it always starts with think through the most valuable pieces of knowledge that your sales reps consume on a daily basis. Pick one or two of them, and start with those and go pretty deep in putting those into a solution like Guru. Solutions like Guru are only going to be as valuable as the content that's in it, and one of the things we tell every customer to try to avoid is to give a sales rep access to an empty repository. Once a sales rep goes to the repository and doesn't find what they're looking for, they're less likely to go back there. They're not going to have the trust in that solution. So we kind of have a best practices in how to build out a sales enablement solution and a sales playbook in Guru, and that's kind of where it starts. Is pick one or two value add categories, go deep in those in Guru, show that to your sales rep, let them know that they're always going to find the answer in Guru, whether it exists in Guru or it doesn't exist in Guru. They have a workflow to ask experts like Steve on their team, so that when Steve answers it, it's going to be added to the repository.
Steve, we'd be remiss to not ask you how our audience could get started with RJMetrics.
Sure. So we do offer a free 7-day trial of RJMetrics. I would say that if you're leveraging data currently, you've got Google Analytics, your Salesforce data, and you're looking for a way to bring this all together into one place so that you, like I said, can report off the entirety of your data set. RJMetrics is a really good solution, and we work with SMBs, from pre-launch startups all the way through, 300-400 person companies. And yeah, I would say that bringing your data together becomes more and more important as you add more and more SaaS apps to your stack, whether it be sales stack, marketing stack, you name it. So I think getting that data into one place, like RJMetrics does, becomes more and more important every day.
Thanks, guys. Don, would you like to leave us with a final word?
I think one of the most important things that I'm seeing here is how taking this analytic approach not only makes things dramatically more efficient internally, but it's becoming necessary for the entire sales process. And I think a lot of companies, they're not up to speed with this level of this analytics approach, especially when it comes to sales. And they may not know it, but it seems like that it would be hurting them, even if they're unaware of that fact, because there are other companies out there that are more data-driven and they are more effective at connecting with customers and providing that efficient, cohesive experience. And I think it's going to become unavoidable that if analytics isn't core to what your sales operation does, then you're going to be losing out more and more, and those who are data-driven are going to win. And it seems like, that's already happening now, but it's really fantastic to see this real-life example of when you engage in this kind of paradigm shift, how it actually transforms not just what happens internally, but what happens externally with those prospects that you're targeting in the first place.
Yeah, there's a real lift that can be measured. Thanks, Dom. Thanks, Steve, JJ. This has really been insightful. I think there's a lot of nuggets here that we could put together into a blog post and share within the Slack team.
All right, thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Take care, guys.
Yep.